different relationship that he has with the whole birthing process because he's not kind of this afterthought. You know, he is an integral part of the birthing team of, you know, the triangle that is you, the baby, and him. And so it's a richness. And one thing that McGill and I reflect on a lot is that the births, all different in themselves, just like yours, all fortified our relationship in all different ways. Like a diamond, there were all tiny little angles that it just fortified and created a real resilience and trust within the relationship, so that when we hit, say, the last 4 years of complete fuckery for us, we were just this really united team. And so even though there were a lot of similarities in the sense of we wanted to have a seat at the table to make decisions about what was going on for us, but we also felt like in the middle of the stormy sea, getting pushed this way and that way, we kept coming back together as a united team, and so that fortification set us up for more of what life had for us. And that, I think that's the stuff where you find out later on, okay, it was definitely worth bringing 4 humans earthside because we were really geared up for that experience. Quanta folks, and welcome to another episode of Fuck the Shoulds blogcast. I'm delighted to join you. My name's Jodi. I'm from QuantiMama, and today I have a very special guest, Carolina, who I have known for many years because I've got to follow her journey into bringing humans into the world. And we're going to have a juicy conversation around birth and wherever that goes. So, Carolina, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jodi. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
So I have a very special bond with you because I refer to you as my soulmate client, or my muse is how I actually refer to you, which I think just encapsulate you because you're you're a muse-like woman. We met over the phone, and because we were talking about placenta encapsulation, and this was a few moons ago now, I think a couple of babies ago now, and we talked about getting some birth education support. And you are the reason, after talking to you, I sat down and I wrote High Vibe Birth Course, which clearly wanted to be expressed, but I will forever be grateful to you, and I will always think of you every time I think about the conception of that course, because you were the reason I wrote it. So that's basically how we started, didn't we? We had this this serendipitous kind of conversation that meant that we then did the course together during the COVID craziness. And so we did that over the screens and stuff, which I don't love teaching that way. I don't love learning that way, but, you know, you guys were great students. And what I wanted to do was chat with you today, more so just to show our beautiful community the face of the muse behind High Vibe Birth. I don't particularly want to talk about the course. What I want to do is talk about your journey with birthing and how birth looks right now, because quite excitingly, you are expecting another baby.
Yeah, that's right. Baby number 4. Every birth has been completely different. So it's been quite the journey. And encapsulating the placenta, I think, has happened with all 3 of my kids. So we'll definitely go for that one again.
Well, once you realise how good it is, it's hard to go back, isn't it?
I can't believe the amount of energy that it builds up inside of you.
There was a joke.
I had to stop. I had to stop taking them at some points because it just builds up. You know, if you have them for over a week, 2 weeks, then I'd have to slow down. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say that there was a joke for a while that I kept having babies so I could have placenta and not the other way around. So
I think we've made that joke in my house as well.
Well, fair enough. So I think it'd be really helpful because you're bringing to this pregnancy a real wisdom, and I feel like I went through that as well because I had what I would consider a very unconscious pregnancy with our first Quanta Kid 1. who's now 16 and driving me around. So I've got my own personal chauffeur,
Oh,
which
wow.
rocks, by the way. It's great being driven around. But the whole pregnancy, I think I very much booked into one of the major tertiary hospitals in Melbourne. I said it didn't cost anything to get pregnant, so it's not going to cost anything to get unpregnant. And that was my philosophy. And the birth experience that we had was unnecessarily interventionist. And medicalized when I'd prepared for essentially a natural birth that would have unfolded on its own timeline. And so I think then that then formed my opinion on how to birth. And I suspect that you've had a very similar one. So do you want to share about your birthing journey from first up to the expectant experience for the fourth?
Yeah, so the first pregnancy sounds very similar to yours. I was working at the time, so I finished up, I think, at about 36 weeks. And I was driving an hour up and an hour down. So I was spending 2 hours a day driving. I think that might have played a factor in the fact that Bub was posterior. Um, so it ended up being a labour that was really slow, a lot of intervention, and it ended up with, I'm not sure if it was it was epidural,
Mm,
or just the spine blocker. I'm not sure I don't remember which one it was. Um, and it was just, what you would call a traumatic birth, because it wasn't what I wanted. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. You get told that there's going to be pain and you know what's going to happen. You can research everything, and think that you're ready. But I think what ended up happening was looking for a course, because I couldn't manage pain at the time. And maybe having the posterior baby played a big factor.
yeah.
And even though I had a one-on-one, I was in the public system. I was in a hospital in the city of Melbourne. But the midwife was just past her date, I think. She just wanted to get me out of there. She wanted to do what needed to be done to get the baby out. And there was not really that sensitivity to the mother's needs, and, any birth plan went out the window. So
Yeah. And
that led us.
I can appreciate that. And I'm just before you move on, because I love the conversations that get to the juice of it. Knowing what you know, and I don't want to frog step too far, but knowing what you know about what birth can be, what was that like for you on reflection of having essentially that kind of intervention that was the spinal block or the epidural, but essentially that dislocation of what was happening inside your body? When you reflect on that now, what comes up for you?
So I didn't even know what the epidural would feel like. I mean, I thought I could at least feel the contractions, and I couldn't even feel that. So it was a big shock for me in that sense. But also, the lack of support. My husband was amazing. He was there and he did whatever he could to help, but there was not really much understanding on either of our parts to what I needed. He didn't know what I needed. I didn't know what I needed. So all those techniques weren't in place.
Yeah.
So looking back at it, and I did try and extend the epidural as much as I could. The midwives were trying to turn Bubs manually, and that just didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. So,
Yeah,
um,
he was determined to be in that position. And that's
yeah,
the
but
thing we
I mean,
find out, right? Is kids actually have an opinion about what their birth or what their position's going to be too. And that can be kind of confronting, thinking that they're a
yeah.
benign kind of skin sac inside of us that we're going to manipulate. And in fact, they've got this consciousness about them.
I think, if I'd known about spinning babies though, and some techniques that I could have maybe after finishing up work, done some things to move Bub into the right position as well, that would have helped. But I didn't know any of that.
No,
I
and look,
just,
you're right, because I mean that I feel like that would be a basic conversation for anyone who is expecting a baby to have a conversation about optimal fetal positioning and positioning in the car and sitting down and all that reclining position. As you say, spinning babies is a fabulous resource, and they have been around for, such a good while and have good information. So if you are pregnant, do go and check out spinning babies, because it can be as simple as the posture that you keep and the positioning you adopt when you're at rest or traveling can make a huge difference on how that baby sits, that then has the most monster impact on how your labor unfolds, because posterior babies are just not in the same position as anterior babies, which is generally how Mother Nature has equipped us to birth in the easiest fashion. So, yeah, I feel like that's exactly the case. But more than that is the knock-on effect of how that birth went for you, and then how that formed your decision when you're expecting number two, which is when we met.
All right. So by the time I got pregnant with number two, I was definitely adamant that I was going to do a course so that I could get hubby on board, or at least me be prepared and kind of speak to him about what needed to be done. And it was pretty traumatic. So I did go through the public system again, and I applied for the one-on-one midwife again due to the hard pregnancy that I had, the hard labour that I had the first time around. So I was really set out to go for natural and have no issues, which didn't turn out that way either, because it ended up being a C-section due to a placenta previa, low-lying placenta. So, and I was off by, I think, 3 mil.
Yeah.
3 mil, and I didn't make it, so that placenta didn't move up enough.
Yeah.
And there was no way we were going to risk it, obviously, C-section was what we were going to go for. But we did do the course, and it was still a really beautiful birth. It was really, I was prepped, he was prepped, and even though it wasn't the birth plan that we wanted, we still made a really special birth. Yeah.
So this is probably quite a confronting question, but if you could compare the first and the second birth, which one would you say was the most satisfying or empowering?
Out of the two, I would say the second one. I felt like I was a bit more in control, even though I still, I couldn't feel up to my shoulders. So when she was born, I actually asked Rob to hold her for that entire time because I was scared I would drop her.
Yeah.
But the midwife really helped us with keeping us connected with Bub and being part of that birth. We had a mirror so I could see baby before she was born. So I was open and I just saw her curled up inside of me. So it was really beautiful just before they pulled her out. It was, I don't think that C-sections are a choice that I would ever make, but I know that it can happen and it has to happen. Some people have small cervix, like a small cervix that they can't labour naturally, and those things have to happen. So I think you could still make a C-section beautiful.
Well, I think that is beautiful. And the interesting thing is that I imagine there would be a lot of people that, with just looking at, the surface level, would assume that if you wanted a natural birth, that a Caesar would be like the worst case scenario. But obviously you're describing something quite different. And I wonder if sometimes we forget the power of that empowerment of being involved and knowing that you get a seat at the table with the decision making on how your baby's born, particularly when it's your body.
You still need to grieve it though. There's definitely a point where we were grieving, or I was grieving anyway.
Yeah.
Hubby was always with the attitude that the best outcome is what we want, and as long as baby and you are okay, that's the main priority. But you still go through the emotional roller coaster of having to come to terms with that. But choosing the music that you wanted. We did delayed clamping. We had, so it was the best case scenario for us at the time.
I love that. It sounds like you would be very well seated to write an empowered cesarean birth plan. There's so
Oh
many
yeah.
elements to that that I don't hear happen, generally speaking, in Caesars. And it may be because the care providers don't have a wish to have that experience for the parents. It might be that the parents don't even realize that they can request that. The idea that you have an image in your mind of your beautiful daughter curled up in utero prior to her coming earthside is extraordinary. Like that's something that you've been gifted and you will have. And same with the delayed cord clamping, of which there is a mountain of uh, clinically based evidence to say it is much, much better for babies to have delayed cord clamping. The fact that it's not done normally is an extraordinary thing to me still in this world, but
In
must
saying
be.
that, I think having the one-on-one midwife really helped because
Yeah,
she was the one advocating for us at in theatre. And
yeah,
theatres were very cold; they didn't want any bacteria or anything to go wrong. So that's a lot. The delayed clamping really caused the surgeons to kind of get her to hurry up. But she was saying, "No, no, wait, wait, wait," and they waited until the cord stopped pumping. So yeah, I take my hat off to her. She was really great.
yeah, brilliant. So having a really strong advocate, I think, is exactly as you say. You just have someone who can talk the talk within that space and be heard to advocate for you. So yeah, that's that. So that's rich. I want to talk
But
about
also
yeah, go on.
to compare the
Yeah.
recovery for both births,
Mm,
the C-section, you'd think would be harder. It was definitely harder than my last pregnancy and birth, but compared to the first two, it was much easier. With Gabriel, because of all the intervention, all the invasive, maneuvering that they tried to do, I did end up having a really hard recovery and had to
yeah.
go back to hospital for all the pain and bruising that I had. Um, so recovery seemed so easy with my second, with my daughter. So
Yeah.
even with that, it was much
There's
much
a
better.
there's a sense of inclusion within factoring that into your recovery. I mean, I suppose with your first, you weren't expecting that to be your pathway. So, but one thing I will say that again, this needs to be common knowledge. If you are having a baby, get some homeopathic arnica from, they're at regular chemists now. So, you can get homeopathy at chemists, but arnica is a natural heparinoid and it reduces bruising and inflammation and is so incredibly effective. And there are no contraindications and interactions with other, even pharmaceuticals. So, you want a tip for stuff, get some arnica because it will save you from, elongating that birth recovery too. So that's just a public service announcement that I wanted to put out there because we want to empower our listeners to go out and actually arm themselves with the things they need that will make a difference for their recovery. And fantastic people making these kits up and so forth. So, if you're interested, go research what's available. But yeah, I mean, we treat arnica as a staple food group in our household because there's so many bumps and bruises all the time. The kids need it. So it's very helpful.
We've started using potato.
Ah, I love
we,
that.
we grate the potato, we make a poultice, and the bruising just goes away. The inflammation
Brilliant.
just it's been a game changer in our house.
I love that. I love that. Total segue, but we've using the infinity symbol every single time we have a bump. Have you heard about that one?
No, no.
Oh my goodness. You make basically your eight over the injury site and it's essentially it's energy medicine. And the understanding is that it creates coherence in an incoherent field. And we have watched like huge bruises and bumps just recede back into the body. It's if I didn't have a medical background and had seen some stuff, I would just be kind of like, huh. But I'm looking at that going, I've got an idea about the mechanism of what's behind. And I'm like, the infinity symbol is wild in terms of what it
Oh
does.
wow.
So, anyway, there's a fun little one to try at home too. I mean, obviously, don't try on the major stuff initially, but it's definitely good for bumps and bruises and watching the
Yeah.
body just heal itself.
I've watched my son barely been able to walk
Yeah,
from soccer injuries on his knees. I've put the potato down for a few hours, and then I think it absorbs the inflammation. I don't know what it does, but it works. Yeah.
I love it. All right, I got some homework. So thank you. That's brilliant. I want to hear about baby number 3 because that I saw you after that birth, and oh my goodness, you were just like magnificently radiant. I have never seen anyone as shiny and sparkly and golden as you were that day. Tell
Yeah,
us about
yeah.
that one.
Oh, that birth was definitely by far um, the perfect birth, the perfect scenario, the perfect birth plan for me. And it did mean that we had to go through a private clinic, a birthing clinic. So we did go through the private. We actually went to. Can I say where we went?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mama Midwives in
Beautiful.
Kensington.
They're an amazing bunch.
Um, they were amazing. I had my group of 3 midwives, my main midwife, who looked after us, Josie, shout out.
Yeah.
And it was a home birth. I had hubby, and that was the birth that we basically implemented everything that we learned in your course for the second pregnancy. We were able to implement in the third birth.
Amazing. I just
Um,
I just loved seeing you.
right
You were
here,
just like you
right
just
here.
kept saying, I know right there. Look
She
at
was
that.
born right here.
That's where the birth. That's where she was born. I just remember you going, I did it. I did it. And I was like, I know, I can see that. Oh my God. How you were, if I could have bottled that or just taken a video and just kept showing it to pregnant women going, want to look like this? Want to look like this after birth? Like this is what's possible. You
Yeah,
reflected to me how I had felt. And I want to say to women, I say it all the time, you won't know how powerful you are until you've done it. Like you just won't know your strength until you've done it. But when you have done it, you will never unknow it. Like you just
yeah,
carry
that's
that,
right.
you embody that energy for everything else you do. Even when you have fear or doubt or any of that stuff, you still have that running through your cells and it becomes
Yeah,
a truth.
not enough women are empowered enough to believe that they can do it, and they begin to feel pain and think they can't do it, but you can.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, we think pain is a reason to stop, but like I did a half marathon a couple of years ago and I wouldn't have done it if I had been listening to the pain.
yeah.
So it's about
But
that
it's such an
reframe, isn't it?
indicator. It's being aware of what the pain is doing,
Yeah,
and where you're feeling it and what's happening in your body.
that's
And
right.
it was a 28-hour labor. My waters broke at about 3 in the morning. So for 24 hours, I was at home, um, having the incrementally increasing contractions, and I could just feel my body getting into it and
Yeah.
slowly just getting itself ready to birth. So I think, yeah, baby Bub was born at 7:24, I think.
Hmm.
Um,
That's so beautiful, isn't it?
and
I mean, just noticing the natural rhythm of how the body went.
being aware of it, being aware of I could, it's slow progression, and then you start to feel the burn in the back, and I know my hips are widening. So it was so beautiful. Yeah, I think that every woman can do it if it's a low risk pregnancy, and I think every woman should, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. Apart from the fact that we say "fuck the shoulds," but yes, absolutely, it would be an amazing thing for women to experience that, or experience versions of that, even if we're talking empowered cesareans and so forth. Just having some kind of sense of ownership over that and being quite included. We talk about so much inclusivity in our society now, but we've missed the point of what real inclusivity can look like, not this virtue signaling nonsense where everyone gets a medal, but real inclusivity where what you say receives equal amount of attention as what, say, your care providers say, and you can actually have a really healthy conversation about it, the benefits, the risks, the alternatives, and doing nothing. And then obviously your intuition that kicks in as well. So yeah, there's so much more I think that we could do to address this, but we're in such a hurry to bring babies earthside, we often skip this nuisance conversation that happens. And that brings me around to you
But there's
obviously,
also,
yeah,
sorry.
go
No,
on.
there's also, just to add to what you were saying, there's also a need for the education of it, because lots of women don't know. I mean, the first pregnancy, the first labor, I had sore jaw. I had a sore jaw for I think about 2 weeks. But being aware of what's going on in my body, every time I'd have a contraction, I'd make sure to relax my jaw, to relax my body, to relax my muscles, and that played a massive role. Just something
Yeah.
so minor can really make a big difference. So
Yeah.
being educated
You
on what.
you would have pulled out all the little nuggets that related to you, and that's the genius of it. And you've kept them, so you know them, and you get to apply them every time you have a baby. So, which is, I mean, it's just such a beautiful thing that keeps going. And I mean, I've found lots of stuff I use even as a parent. Breathing has been very useful as a parent where I've got triggered, usually the mirror in my children. They're bringing up all the stuff that you don't want to see in yourself, and you need to find some kind of inner resourcing to not make it about them. You make it about yourself. So I'm
That's
really
right.
I'm really interested to um talk with you about how you're approaching this one, because you did mention to me earlier that your decision making is being affected by a number of factors, including the cost of actually having a birth on your terms. And we won't even get into the point of whether that's appropriate or not, that, whether it's reasonable that you make decisions on how to give birth based on how much it costs. I think that's a very sad indictment on society, especially in our very privileged white middle class world. But it's a reality for you. So, how are you approaching this birth with those perceived, I suppose, limitations?
I think I've also had to grieve that as well. I've had to come to terms with the fact that it might not be what I would ideally love. I gave birth just behind here to Evangelina 2 years ago. She was a
Mm.
water birth. She came out half in her sack, and that was a visualization that I'll never be able to forget. So seeing that was the epitome of birthing for me. So I definitely wanted that again, but that's not feasible with the financial situation that we're in at the moment. We've got 3 kids already. Public system does offer home birthing, but the eligibility for it is so, like, the criteria is so defined, and they're just not. Obviously, I understand that there's liability involved, and there's definitely like risks involved, so they can't accept everyone to have a home birth. Pregnancies, health issues, diabetes. But the C-section that I had for my second birth was the factor that they declined my home birth application. So I did apply for one-on-one midwife, but I think that will be declined as well because of the whole process and the time that it's taken to apply for home birth, get that decline, apply for caseload. So I think at this point they're already getting births in February. Bub will be due in November. So it's just too late, I think, to have a one-on-one midwife at this point. So I'm just going to be going freestyle with hubby, and I think I'll just be retouching up some of those course strategies, staying home as long as I can. I know that my births are about 28 hours. So if I can stay home 24 hours and then go to the hospital, and just really try and block out my exterior, because I know my birthing can stall. I know it can slow down for that trajectory. On the way to the hospital, I feel like it could slow down the birth. Having to deal with people will slow down the birth. So just making sure that
Yeah.
hubby's involved. I've got headphones in, maybe a
Yes.
eye mask. I don't have to deal with anyone. Just wheel me in and I can do it there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you've got those inner resources, which is just, it's so awesome. I mean, you know a lot of things about how your birth can unfold, but you have inner resources as well. Yeah, go on.
I remember reading somewhere that animals in the wild will find a safe place to birth, but if they see a predator or they hear a predator's nearby, their body will stop birthing so that they can run away, escape, find somewhere safe to birth again. And so that's what sticks to my mind when I think about birthing and like people talking or communicating with you about things that might get your stress levels high. There's so many factors that can just stall the birthing process, and I keep that in mind. So that's probably one of the worries that sticks in my head, and so I've shared that with hubby so that he can just take control of that and be my filter.
I think that's wonderful to have. I mean, firstly, hubbies love having a job to do, but as they, become more proficient at being birth support, and I know obviously McGill did as well, that it was joked about that he was like this born again doula. Um, but that knowledge of what your body can do, in fact, it's almost well, I find it extraordinarily empowering because I know that my body will support me to birth in a place that feels safe and supported. And Dr. Sarah Buckley talks about the fact that the hormones of birth, when it's undisturbed, are identical to the hormones of lovemaking. So it's that like beautiful connectivity of the thing that got you pregnant. There's a facility to have all of those hormones available to you when you actually give birth as well, which is a pretty sweet way to do it. So yeah, the fact that your body can hit pause on some of these things. I mean, that's why babies very infrequently are born in cars, but they will make it to their birth space. They will make it to the hospital entrance, and they'll not really the most private and safe feeling space, but I suppose in comparison to a car, it's a much easier cleanup, shall we say?
Yep, yep. So that's probably what's been on my mind as
Yeah,
of late. And so just having that in plan for when the time comes,
yeah,
what those strategies will be, which are different to what we did at home. At home,
yes.
it was a lot of the soft touch massage, the back rubs. I did use a TENS machine just to help with that last couple of
Mm.
hours of contractions, and I do think that really helped. Um,
The TENS is fabulous. I mean, there are so many non-invasive options for that kind of stuff. The TENS machine is transferable, the light touch massage is transferable, the breath is transferable,
the
and so
breathing, the
yeah, the
breathing is
breathing.
so important.
It is the center point to having a great birth, because when you change your breathing, you change your inner chemicals.
Yeah,
You trigger different hormones,
and
and
you're
therefore you
calming
have.
your body.
That's right, and you have a different experience. It is like the most important thing. There are people out there that will have the pharmaceuticals and they won't work and they'll need more, right? It'll only just kind of dull the sensation, or maybe have extra problems with it where they feel disconnected from their body or a bit out of body or whatever, right? But breath, I mean, it never fails to deliver, and it's all you. I just think, why aren't we all doing this? Like, why isn't
And
that just
and
the norm?
and to compare the last labor with the first one, I'm sure that my breathing was not helping my body. It wasn't helping Bub get out,
Yeah,
getting him into the right position. My breathing, my tension, my whole body was saying, "Don't do this."
yeah.
So having that relaxed body is crucial. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you already sound like you're preparing so beautifully, and you're about to, well, you're not too far off your third trimester, so the downhill run into this baby arriving, and already there's a lot of preparedness that's happening for you. But I love the fact that you're really comfortable to sort of say, there's more for me to do. You know, there's more for me to allow for the grief to move through about the fact that this birth will unfold in a different way because you're not birthing in the space that was your first preference. But there's also, once that grief moves through, there's a real richness to be able to find the surrender on the other side and the trust and find another way to create the high vibe out of that. So it's a beautiful thing that you're going into it eyes wide open and that and being very kind to yourself and very gentle to yourself.
And giving the opportunity, allowing for the opportunity for my husband to take control. You know, a lot of women don't want to do that. And I have struggled to say, you know what, I can trust my husband in these situations and settings. And at home, he did a fantastic job. In the theatre, he did a fantastic job. So I'm sure he will follow through as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. He will. I mean, he's a gem of a gentleman, but also there's a different relationship that he has with the whole birthing process because he's not kind of this afterthought. You know, he is an integral part of the birthing team of, the triangle that is you, the baby, and him. And so it's a richness. And one thing that McGill and I reflect on a lot is that the births, all different in themselves, just like yours, all fortified our relationship in all different ways. Like a diamond, there were all tiny little angles that it just fortified and created a real resilience and trust within the relationship so that when we hit, say, the last 4 years of complete fuckery for us, we were just this really united team. And so even though there were a lot of similarities in the sense of we wanted to have a seat at the table to make decisions about what was going on for us, but we also felt like in the middle of the stormy sea getting pushed this way and that way, we kept coming back together as a united team, and so that fortification set us up for more of what life had for us. And that, I think, that's the stuff where you find out later on, okay, it was definitely worth bringing 4 humans earthside because we were really geared up for that experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not without any issues and problems along the way, but communicating it and solving it and coming up with strategies to deal with it is
Yeah.
what pays off in the end.
It does. So, if you were talking to someone who is expecting their first baby, what are the gems? What would you have liked to have heard when you were expecting your first from the wisdom that you embody now?
Um, I think that understanding of having to relax your body, to be in touch with what's going on with your body and relaxing and breathing, learning the breaths because they're not all the same. The active labor stage is different to the build up.
Yeah, it is.
So learning what kind of breathing is important. And doing it with your partner, because that course that we did involved him. He was part of it just as much as I was. And I think that education is so important. You need to be educated. You need to prepare for your births, regardless of what they are. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And look, I have run many a birth class where husbands have very much looked like they'd been dragged out on an all-day shopping trip at DFO. But by the end of the course, was sitting forward, very excited, going, right, can we have this baby now? I'm like, no, you've got another trimester to go. But the change for them, that catalytic experience of them feeling so involved it's such a gift as well. Like it's just to see these men blossom into they tap into their divine feminine, which when we live in balance, we have an expression of both divine masculine, divine feminine. And the baby, I think, picks up on that too. They go, okay, dad's caught up too. So one thing we can gift our men is the opportunity to be involved because society, for, the last good 70 years has kept men separate. So I think we've got better at involving them now and honoring how their experience is, but we can still do more. And that happens not through some fancy classes and things like that, but literally just a sharing of the minds in the birthing team unit, you know. So yeah, there's a real opportunity to strengthen that stuff too, which is great. And that's what you've done, you know, in your
Yeah,
family. And it shows
yeah.
in your parenting.
And I look, I agree with the masculine. Like my husband's so masculine. He's on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to being a very masculine male that he is. So having to surrender to him, having to be vulnerable to him, and him having to provide something that doesn't probably come naturally to him is a big deal and can be a big deal to lots of women. So yeah, you do definitely have to trust them and surrender to your partner, which I think is part of that bonding
Yeah,
that creates, you know, the
absolutely. And feels
perfect
so
birth.
good once you do it. Once you fall into the trust of that decision, it actually can feel really good. Feel really supported, which is, you know, how we want because we're meant to be in community, aren't we? We're not meant to be lone soldiers.
That's right. Yeah,
Mm.
we're not battling against each other. We're working together.
Absolutely. So, in bringing this beautiful conversation to a close, I would love to invite you to just share with us what's your commitment to yourself going forward.
Oh, I've not been asked this question. I'd have to have some time to think about it.
No, because I want you to think about what your subconscious mind already has for you, because you already know all the answers. What
Um,
what what
s-
what feels impolite to even do for yourself?
oh, well, look, I think that mothering is one of the major aspects of my life right now, and that's where I want to go. That's where I want to be right now. The desire to go back to work is not there, and I admire women that do. I admire women that do go back to work and can handle all of those responsibilities on top of work, mothering, household chores. You know, it's a lot for women. So I've been blessed to be able to be a full-time mum, and that's where I'm at the moment. So I think spending time with myself is so important though. So going out with a few friends is always something that I need to do to um, just wind down because we're attachment parents, we co-sleep, you know, it's really hard to find time for yourself sometimes. Um,
Yeah,
but
try homeschooling. It's a bit the same. Your kids are
but
always with
yeah,
you. I mean that
yeah,
I don't even think that requires explanation. That's how we avoid being in a straitjacket, quite frankly, because we must look for harmony in our life. Balance is a misnomer, but harmony, but where you get those moments of just self-nourishment, it just sustains you and you can go for longer, you know. So yeah, I applaud that.
hubby and I are both introverts, so we definitely need time for ourselves and time apart. So making sure that we give that to each other, and allow for the other person to have that, I think is really important for us. Yeah.
What a beautifully supportive statement. I love that. Well, we've all borne witness to that. So you are well supported to follow your heart's desire to keep nourishing yourself and being the extraordinary earth mama that you are to your beautiful children, both born and unborn. I'm really grateful that we had this conversation, notwithstanding I get to show the world your beautiful face, and for being so, you just were so inspiring for me and being the catalyst to pour my heart out on paper and video. But if nothing else, I would hope that we've planted the seed of curiosity for women who perhaps thought there weren't any other options or they weren't allowed to, it's a whole thing about permission, but weren't allowed to go and find out more. There are amazing resources out there that support you to birth in an empowered way that's on your terms, whether that's with your chosen care providers in their preferred space or in your preferred space. There are many ways to birth, but we must be radically responsible in going and seeking that information out.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's definitely options. I went through a clinic, but you could look at private midwives that can support you in that, doulas that can support you in that. So there's definitely options out there, but there's not always open to every opportunity for every person, you know?
Yeah, which is why my favorite birth preparation affirmation is that the that something along the lines of my birth unfolds in the way that it was meant to. So that there's a trust in and surrender in how that goes. Yes, you still take all the tools that you need. You have a radical responsibility with looking after yourself, having a mindset that is very grounded and nurturing and kind to self and our birth team. And you have your breathing practice and you do all those things that you can do. But ultimately, we must place our trust and surrender in the universal field of how it's going to unfold and our baby's opinion in terms of how they want to be born as well.
And I also think, just to add to that, the support person that you choose is important, and who is in there with you is important. I mean, I think for the first labor, I had my mother-in-law there, I had my mum there, I had my hubby there. But, I think the best thing that I learned out of that situation was I just need to put my trust in my hubby and have him there, and empower him to know what he needs to do for me. Because it's not really a show, So
yeah, whereas I birth with a whole bunch of people.
You don't have to feel obliged to have everyone there or have people pressuring you to have them there. I think have the person that is the most needed there.
That's right. Invite them for dinner, not your birth. If it feels like a should, don't do it. Like, it's simple as that. Because in the raw birth state, in your birth, when you're in your birth cave, then all of those discomforts will come up. So you can't underestimate how impactful they can be. And yeah, you're advocating for two people. You're advocating for yourself and your unborn baby as well. So
yeah, and look, I didn't feel uncomfortable having the people like my mother or my mother-in-law there. That they were great. They were quietly sitting there, but in hindsight, I think I can trust my husband and I can experience this deeply personal experience with him. And that's where we're at now. So I haven't even considered inviting anyone else because I think it's just how you made them is how they come out. So
I love that. You come full circle, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Carolina, thank you so much for just showing up authentically and letting us be just in a very small way involved in your baby's growth and arrival earthside. It's just been an absolute delight to talk to you. And obviously the collective field is with you to bring this baby earthside in a really empowering and beautiful way.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. It is a pleasure. And, I don't often feel like I have much to offer people. So it's nice to feel that the births of every one of my little babies has played a part to someone at least.
I think we've resoundingly disproven the fact that you don't have anything to offer or say. You are absolute magic.
Oh, thank you. I'll definitely be getting this placenta encapsulated, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
We will talk to you very soon.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. And Quantifolk, you stay well. It's been a delight being with you. And stay tuned. We'll have more episodes coming this year. I've got my mojo back. Woohoo!